Ever wonder why your photos are too dark, too bright, or just a little meh? Today you'll master the exposure triangle, aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, so you can shoot confidently in any type of light. Exposure is simply how bright or dark your photo is. Getting correct exposure is all about understanding the exposure triangle, the three settings that control how much light hits the sensor. Think of it like three sliders that add up to a proper exposure for natural light. But each slider has a creative side effect. The first side of the exposure triangle is aperture, the size of the lens opening. It's shown as an F number, like f1.8, f4, or f16. The lower the F number, like f1.8, means a larger aperture opening, which allows in more light, and it creates a photo with a more out-of-focus background, or a shallow depth of field. The higher F number, for instance f11, means a smaller aperture opening. This allows less light to hit the sensor, but that creates a sharp focus and gives you a larger, deep depth of field. A portrait shot at f1.8 has a subject that is sharp, but the background is soft and out of focus. The same scene at f8 has more background detail. If you want creamy bokeh for portraits, start around f2.8. For landscapes, try f8 or f11 to have a large depth of field. Shutter speed is the second side of the exposure triangle. The shutter speed is how long the sensor is exposed to light. A fast shutter speed of about 1/1000th of a second allows in less light, but it freezes motion. This is great for sports and wildlife photography. Slow shutter speeds, 1/32nd of a second to 1 second, gives the exposure more light, but it can cause motion blur. Motion blur can be great for light trails, creating silky moving water, but not so much for people who are moving. A quickly moving subject at 1/1000th of a second will be tack sharp. The same subject at 1/300th of a second will be blurry. Slow shutter speeds can also result in camera shake. In order to avoid camera shake in your photos, use a shutter at least 1 over the focal length of your lens. For example, 1/50th of a second for a 50mm lens to reduce camera shake. The third side of the exposure triangle is ISO, which controls the sensor's sensitivity to light. Modern digital cameras have really opened up the use of the ISO side of the exposure triangle. Low ISO of 100 to 200 usually create cleaner images with less noise, but the exposure needs more light. High ISOs of, say, 4000 ISO or higher make the image brighter in low light, but can add noise and grain. Try to keep the ISO as low as you can while maintaining your chosen aperture and shutter speed. These three settings are a trade-off. If you make a change to one of the three, you need to make a change to one of the others to keep the exposure correct. If you open the aperture to let in more light, you can use a faster shutter speed or lower ISO. If you slow the shutter for more light, you might stop down the aperture or lower ISO to keep exposure balanced. How you balance the exposure by using the three sides of the exposure triangle depends on the look you want or the type of photos you are taking. Aperture controls the depth of field. Shutter speed helps control motion. ISO allows you to shoot in low light, but may result in noisy photos. Use the exposure meter in your camera to make sure your photos are correctly exposed. Watch your exposure meter and histogram. Aim to avoid clipped highlights, unless you're going for a silhouette. If highlights are blown out, either close the aperture, higher F number, increase the shutter, or lower ISO. With the newest digital cameras, a great way to shoot is in manual mode with auto ISO. This way you can pick the shutter speed and f-stop that you want, while the camera will keep the exposure correct by adjusting the ISO. One exercise you can do is see the difference f-stop and shutter speed can have in photos and to take 3 different shots. Pick a subject, then take 3 photos, changing only one setting at a time. First, set your f-stop to f2.8, shutter speed to 1/250th, ISO set to auto. Second, set the f-stop to f5.6, shutter speed to 160, and ISO set to auto. This is the same exposure, but with more depth of field. Third, set f-stop to f2.8, shutter speed to 1/1000th of a second, ISO set to auto. This will bump up the ISO. Compare background blur, motion, and noise. That's the exposure triangle. 3 controls, 1 balanced exposure, endless creative choices. Next time you shoot, decide first what you want to freeze or blur, how much background blur you want, and let ISO be the helper that fills in the light.